Welcome. Today's video we're going to compare the Leica MP against the Leica M3 and the Leica M2. Everything you need to know if you're tempted to get a modern Leica M film camera and whether or not you could probably make do with one of the older cameras, the M2 and the M3. I'll also briefly touch on the differences between the MP and our Leica M6, for example, and the MP and the Leica MA. I've got my white gloves ready, so let's flip the camera and get started. Hey guys, Matt here from MrLeica.com. If you're new here, I do write written reviews on all the Leica cameras, so I'll put a link below to MrLeica.com. So yes, the first Leica M camera with a rangefinder is the Leica M3, dating back to 1954. As you see on the front, you've got your frame selector switch, you've got your self-timer, you've got your rewind lever, and of course the standard 3 windows for rangefinder cameras, and this is to release your lens. On the back, you've got your flash sync ports, the legacy ports where you have to run a cable to your flash, and your combined viewfinder rangefinder, which has got parallax correction. This is your reminder of what film is in the camera, but it's more for decoration for me these days. I don't use this. On the top plate, you've got your automatic frame counter, which means when you unload your film, this will automatically go back to 0. You've got your one metal piece film advance lever. You've got your shutter speeds going from bulb to 1,000th of a second with 50th of a second flash sync speed. You have a cold shoe and you have your rewind knob. This is an additional modern add-on which I can put a link to below. It makes it much faster for rewinding your film. Top plate is engraved with Leica and your serial number as seen here. So this is the standard. This was the beginning, the Leica M3. You've also got your strap lugs on the sides, as you can see here, and on the base for completeness you turn this tripod socket, and there is where you load your film, and there is where I've repaired my shutter when I burnt a hole in the shutter curtain. Another characteristic of the M3 and the M2 is you have a pull-out film spool. I actually quite like these because they're more secure than what you're going to see in the later models, because once the film is in, there's no way you can kind of mess up your film loading, whereas on newer models it's not quite so easy and people do mess up film loading. So Leica M3, it will get quicker. This is just to give you the basics. Leica M2 came next, and this is like an economy version of the Leica M3. You have the same frame selector switch, same self-timer, same rewind lever, same 3 windows, same lack of red dot, same strap lugs. On the top plate, most things look the same, but to make it cheaper, they made it a manual frame counter, which means you have to remember to set it to 0 before you take your pictures. If you have a small brain like me, this is not always something you think about, so therefore you forget what frame you're on because you don't set it to 0 at the start. For this reason, I much prefer the automated frame counter that you see in the M3 and also then in all later models. Now this is a much more recent Leica MP. You can see you've got the automated frame selector switch from the M3. You've got the single piece film advance from the M3 with the same style of like threaded shutter release button. You have the same 1 to 1000 or bulb to 1000 shutter dial, but the difference is now you have a off button, which I'll talk about in a second. There. You have the same pull-up rewind knob, as you can see here. Unlike the M3 and the M2 that have these high quality cold shoes with nice springs here, you now have a cheaper made hot shoe with the single pin to fire your flash, which means you don't really need the sync port, but it does have a sync port if you want one, just under that black cap there that says Leica on it. Now in the M3 and the M2, you've got the discs on the back for your film. On the MP, you've got the disc, but this time it relates to the light meter. So this camera's different because inside, if I take the cap off, now you can see the light meter and all the mess. So the light meter works from the dot on the shutter and corresponds to the ISO you set on the back of the camera. So for example, if I was shooting ISO 400 film, I'd set 400 on the back, and then when I look through the viewfinder, turn it on. Let's say we're doing 60th of a second, advance it. When I look through the viewfinder, you're going to see the two red arrows left and right, or the red dot which is in the middle. And so for that reason, you need to have make sure this is correctly set on the back. If you look on the front of the MP, you now have the battery cover where the self timer used to be. Here you can see the self timer. You got the same rewind lever and the same frame selector switch. You got the same 3 windows on the front, the same lack of red dot, same strap lugs, but on the inside, on the bottom, you now have a more modern, I think it's 1/4 inch tripod socket instead of the old style thread. And if we take the plate off, now you can see you've got the quick load design, first seen I think in the Leica M4. So what this means is you've got 3 prongs, as you can see here, which means you now have no film spool to take out, unlike the M3 and the M2. This is, I guess, good if you're worried that you're going to lose a film spool, but for me there's nothing wrong with the film spools, and I think those are a bit more guaranteed that you won't mess up your film loading. See my video on film loading. So let's recap. The MP has got a light meter, not found in the older models. The MP has a hot shoe compared to cold shoes in the older models. All 3 cameras have the same film advance lever, same film rewind knob, almost the same shutter dial, except this one's got the bulb off mode combined as one button. You've got the battery cover here, which some people don't like, because when you hold the camera you can kind of feel it here. Maybe it's a love or hate thing. And you have your fast loading compared to the film spools in the M2 and the M3. Now where it gets different is when you look through the viewfinder. For those of you that don't know, the M3 has got 3 single frame lines, a 50, a 90 and a 135, hence the name M3 for 3 frame lines. The M2 then introduced the 35mm frame line, so you have 35, 50, 90, 135. And then the MP, which is I guess also a combination of the M6, it's got the same frame lines as the M6 Classic, 28, 90, 50 and 75, and 35 and 135, so 6 frame lines altogether. The advantage of the older cameras is when you look through, you've got a much less cluttered view. Let me try and show you. So first, the M3 viewfinder. If I can do this. You can see the frame lines of the M3 is just one single frame line, which is permanently there. The 50 is always there on the outside. And it's just so pretty and just so easy to use, and yeah, amazing. For me, this is the best viewfinder of every Leica M camera. It's also the most magnified with a 0.91 magnification viewfinder. M2 viewfinder. The M2 viewfinder now shows you 35mm frame lines, as well as 50, 90 and 135. And as you can see, it's almost as pretty as an M3 finder, but not quite, because you don't have that nice rounded solid line at the edge. You'll also notice the patch on the M2 viewfinder here is slightly smaller than what you'll see in later models. It's like a different shape. Now if we look through the MP, the modern one, the first thing you might notice is it's clearer and contrastier, and maybe not quite so warm looking as the older cameras. And the rangefinder patch is slightly deeper than the M2 rangefinder patch. Because it's got 6 frame lines, you're going to see 2 at any time, as you see there. So it's not. And so for that reason, I prefer the M3 for the cleanest looking viewfinder. Advantage of the MP viewfinder is you've got the coated elements, which means you don't have the ghosting issue when you compare it to cameras like the M4P, M42 and the M6 Classic. Those cameras, you can get kind of a ghosting, and like the patch disappears in certain lighting conditions with these cameras. I'll maybe compare the MP, M4P and M6 in another video. While I've got the M4P out as a bonus, You'll notice on the M4P, the same as the M6, you have a two-piece film advance lever compared to the original single piece, which I much prefer, found in the M3 and the M2. The M4P is also much lighter because it's got a zinc top plate and bottom plate compared to brass top plate and bottom plate found in the original Leica M2 and Leica M3. Again, unlike the M4P and M6, you've got the pull-up rewind knob instead of the perhaps preferred by some faster rewind crank, and a similar hot shoe and automatic frame counter. Now, to get right into the details and the weeds, as they say, some people prefer the older cameras and say they just feel better and the film advance feels just cleaner. I've seen one video where they talk about how far the film lever moves. So if we advance this, you can see the triangle here to give you an idea of how far the movement is. If we compare that to an M3, it doesn't travel as far. So for that reason, it might be why some people prefer the M3 film advance, because it's slightly shorter. And maybe that's the difference. Maybe it's the difference in the feeling. For completeness, the M2, you can't really see it as much, but I'd say the M2 is maybe more similar to the MP, maybe slightly further. In terms of sound effects, let's compare. That one sounds crisper, the MP. The M2 also sounds pretty good. Now, the older cameras such as the M2 and the M3 are obviously considerably older, so it's going to be 100% down to whether these cameras are being CLA'd as to how smooth they are. If we do a quick weigh-in, if I move the cameras to one side, so I've had to remove a glove so I can operate. First, the M3, it does have an additional crank and an additional peak design anchor, so just bear that in mind. 581, no filming. M2 weighs in at 570, so slightly lighter. And then the MP to me feels a heavier camera, so I'm interested. I bet it'd be nearer to 600. Almost 597, if you can see that. That's MP with battery included and no film. So this is the heaviest of the three cameras, but it's only if you use film cameras like me all the time that you're going to notice the difference. I think to normal people, you're really not going to notice the difference at all. For completeness, let's put a lightweight M4P on if you love lightweight cameras. Again, it's all small details, but 524, which makes the M4P the lightest of the cameras we've got here. For those of you that own digital cameras such as this, like M10P, 662, sorry for the lighting, 661, final answer, yep, 661. If you use the cameras like the M10P already, buying an MP will actually feel slightly lighter. So in conclusion, can I recommend getting a more modern Leica MP? Or could you save a lot of money and get an older Leica M3 or Leica M2? I know this is talked about a lot on the internet, but I agree and I say the same to my students. For me, the Leica M3 is the best feeling, smoothest of the three cameras, best built, and the next of all the M cameras ever made. And the next best is the M2, but I prefer the more premium M3, which has got the counter versus no counter. The MP is a modern remake, I guess, of these cameras, but with a built-in light meter, and so they tried to make it as premium as the older cameras, and I'd say it's probably 95% as premium feeling as these cameras, but without the kind of history that comes with them. So with a 1950s or 1960s film Leica, whether it's an M2, M3, M4, you don't know the history, and so there's a very high chance that you're going to need to get these cameras CLA'd and may have problems down the line where they'll need to be serviced and things replaced and repaired just because of the age of these cameras. Example, the self timer is dead on this one, and you can see the leatherette's damaged as well. This is the examples. On a modern camera, you can buy these brand new in 2024, the time of making this video. And so you can buy a film camera which has got warranty, it's brand new, it's had no wear. And so if you're planning to get one film camera for life, you might want to get an MP in 2024, pay the additional price to buy it new, or maybe pay slightly less and get like a good used copy, hopefully with say a 6-month shop warranty. And then that will give you peace of mind. You'll save money compared to the new price, and you've got less risk compared to using the older cameras where you could get problems. Now, if you only shoot with a 50mm lens and you don't use flash, I'd probably recommend finding a clean Leica M3, get it CLA'd, and that viewfinder is so good for 50 and 90mm especially. If you don't need the light meter found in the MP. If you're a 35mm guy and you shoot 35mm lenses all day and you don't use flash and you don't use a light meter, I'd recommend getting a clean copy of a Leica M2, and then again get it CLA'd if necessary. If you use 28mm, 75mm, and you might need to use a hot shoe and you enjoy, the main thing is you might want the light meter, then I'd recommend getting the MP. You've also of course got the Leica M6, I'll maybe do that in another video. I do own the Leica M6. Main difference with the Leica M6 to the Leica MP. The Leica M6 reissue from 2022 is near identical internally to the MP. However, on the externals, you've got your M4P style film rewind crank and M4P style film advanced 2-piece lever. If you prefer these characteristics, you will prefer an M6 reissue to an MP. You'll get a red dot on the M6 where it's absent on the MP, and you'll still get the same light meter found in the MP in the M6 reissue. So they're very, very similar. The other thing I guess to consider is the paint finish. If you want a black paint like a film camera, you will need to get a black paint MP because that's the only black paint option. If you want a silver chrome as found here, or the MA, which I'll talk about in another video, the MA is the same as the MP, just without a light meter. If you want black chrome, the same style as this, you need to get a Leica M6 reissue or the Leica MA. Again, I'll try and do the MA in a future video. So hopefully that will give you some idea of which film camera might be right for you. As I say, I prefer the M3 where possible for my 50mm portraits. The M2 is great for 35mm. And then the MP is my latest addition to maybe future-proof my film setup by buying a more modern camera. In hindsight, did I need it? Not really, because I don't really use the light meters in these cameras. As you can see, I always forget to turn it off. So at some point my battery is going to be flat anyway, and then I won't use the meter anyway. So for that reason, for me, the MP isn't worth it, and I'd be more than happy using the M3 and the M2. As long as I have a M camera with a hot shoe, such as the M4P, for when I'm using flash with film. For recap, if you're using flash with film, you can only sync at 50th of a second by turning it to there, which is the maximum on all Leica M film cameras. I mean, it does sound really good, and this viewfinder is very clear, very contrasty. It depends what you value the most. Yeah, if you get a chance to visit the Leica store, maybe try them and see what you think. I'm non-biased because I own all of them, so I can tell you for me, for general purpose and modern in 2024, the MP is a very good choice for one good all-round film camera to do everything from 28mm to 135mm. I'll put a link below to a detailed blog post comparing all Leica M cameras, so check that out and it'll hopefully recap things covered in this video. So that's it. Sorry, it's quite a bit of information. Hopefully I gave you everything you needed if you're on the market to buy either an older Leica M film camera or a more modern one as seen here with the Leica MP. Feel free to subscribe, and I will try to include a Leica MA and Leica M6 in a future video. Thanks for watching, thanks to my awesome patrons, and hope to see you in the next video.